Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live post-game reaction. Lakers just beat the Milwaukee Bucks 119-95 to conclude a successful and informative road trip. They finished the road trip 3-2. They are now 10-4 on the season on a 59-win pace. And LeBron James has yet to play in a game this season. We have a lot to touch on, but before we get started, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate you all that tuned in to my playback, either on playback or on YouTube. You can watch the replay of it on playback or on YouTube. So going to be doing those more frequently, especially for the road games that I'm not at, especially the bigger road games like I did OKC, then did Milwaukee. So we'll continue to sprinkle in some playbacks and maybe even get to the point that I'm doing them pretty consistently in terms of like every road game I'm not at, but we shall see. So far though, I have enjoyed the playback experience, even though there's been a couple of bumps in the road getting the stream going and whatnot. But tonight the Lakers beat the Milwaukee Bucks 119-95. And for my money, this was the best win of the season. The Bucks to me are the third best team the Lakers have beaten this season. I think you could order, or you could put it in any order in terms of Minnesota versus San Antonio. I would maybe lean San Antonio being the better team, but I think it's close there between those two. But obviously they beat Minnesota twice, beaten San Antonio once. And I think those are the two best teams the Lakers have beaten this season. But then, you know, there's a little bit of a drop off. And I think you get to Milwaukee, who entered tonight 8-5, tied for fourth in the East, eighth in offense, 21st in defense. Second night of a back-to-back for them. But they have Giannis, who's playing at, to me, a top three-ish level in the NBA, certainly in the MVP mix alongside Luka and Jokic and SGA. I think those are the clear top four right now. So this was a quality win for the Lakers, and to me did change how I view the tenor of this road trip. So I said it at the top, my overarching thought from tonight's game and really extrapolating this out for the road trip was a successful and informative road trip. And what I mean by that is anytime you go above 500 on a road trip, to me, that is a success. And I think a couple things can be true here, right? Like, so the Lakers had a successful trip. They went 3-2. They salvaged a 1-2 start to the trip, a pretty disappointing start to the trip. Like I was said, the Hawks loss was the worst loss of the season. They won up themselves or won down themselves with the OKC performance. That was the worst performance of the season. And then also the Charlotte win to me was not. I felt they showed up for one quarter. You know, some people have said the second half. I really consider it only the third quarter that they showed up for, and they won that game. However, they have followed that up with their two best defensive performances of the season from a defensive rating perspective. This was their best defensive performance of the season from a defensive rating perspective. Lowest point total allowed this season. 100.6 defensive rating for LA / a 100.6 offensive rating for Milwaukee. But I say it's successful because they went 3-2, and I did think we saw a resolve and a processing and execution bounce back from LA compared to the beginning of the trip. So of course they should not have laid the egg that they laid in Atlanta. I would have liked to have seen a better response in that Charlotte game. I thought the response in that first half was troubling. And certainly, you know, I've already talked about like the OKC game being a measuring stick. And if that is the measuring stick between those two teams, there's clearly a giant gap between the Lakers and Thunder. And there might just be a giant gap between the Thunder and the entire NBA right now. Denver's really been the only team, and kind of Houston, that have looked anywhere close to OKC's level this season. But I think the informative part of this trip for me was we learned a lot about the Lakers on this trip, right? Like we learned that this is a group that has to play hard every single night, and their margin for error, especially as they've dealt with different guys being in and out of the lineup. Like obviously Austin missed part of this trip, and now Rui and Marcus missed tonight's game, and LeBron's been out the whole time. Gabe's been out the whole time. But like this is a group that has to show up with a requisite level of energy and effort and focus. And I think we learned that in the Atlanta loss of it doesn't matter who you're playing against. If you're playing against an inferior opponent who doesn't have multiple starters, their top 4 leading scorers, doesn't matter. If they have a certain level of athleticism and speed, they can compete with the Lakers on a given night. Then I think some of that bled into the Charlotte game, and then OKC was a different beast entirely, where there was a lot of the athleticism and focus and effort stuff to a degree, but I thought that was mainly just an execution thing of one team was operating at like a 9.5 or a 10 out of 10. The other team was operating at like a 6 maybe to start, and then it progressively got worse and ended up at like a 3 or a 4. So I think we learned like the underbelly of this team was certainly the Atlanta game of they were a little bit too, arrogance a strong word, but a little bit too like, let's say confident that they were going to just show up for that game and win it. And we learned like this team does not have the margin for error to just show up and win basketball games. Like, yes, they can rely on Luka. They can rely on Austin. Once LeBron's back, they can rely on him. But their defensive floor is so low, and the way that like they need to be humming and focused at a certain level, I think, to not blow games against bad teams, right? Then we also learned against even a good team, you have to have different looks you can go to, and they were just wholly unprepared for how OKC was going to defend them. Part of that's on JJ and the coaching staff. Part of that is on the players and the inability to execute 4-on-3, 3-on-2 situations. But the reason I come back to this being a successful trip and an informative trip is we saw LA bounce back, and if not for some rough bench minutes against New Orleans and some rough bench minutes again tonight against Milwaukee, LA could have won that New Orleans game by like 25 plus. They could have won tonight by 30, 35 plus. Part of it was just being shorthanded, and some of those groupings did not work and gave up some big runs to their personnel. But I think all things considered, anytime you could go on the road and be above 500 on a road trip, if you can learn from some of your prior, because there's an alternative version here where LA is in a dogfight the entire game against New Orleans and then gets smacked by Milwaukee. They go 2-3 on this trip. And now we're talking about like a bigger picture concern here of like, is the season getting away from the Lakers? Or are they letting go of the rope too early? Like, what's going on with this group? But the fact that they bounced back after the disaster of the OKC game and had their 2 best defensive performances of the season, and Milwaukee was on second night of a back-to-back, but like they were healthier than the Lakers were. I was encouraged by that, right? Like to me, again, this is the best win of the season when factoring in nearly winning wire to wire, leading this game by 31 at halftime. Certainly their best, like the first half was their best half of the season, best defensive half of the season. But that first half performance trickled in with like a shaky at times second half, but still were able to stymie the Bucks runs, and like Luka made several big plays, several big shots in the third. Austin made several big plays, several big shots in the fourth. And that to me was the difference in this game. So we learned like the Lakers are a really good team, a good to really good team. There's a gap between them and the top of the league, right? Like if OKC played them right now, I think it would be closer. But OKC's probably winning most of those games by double digits. That's just the gap right now between these two teams. That said, when they lock in, they can defend at a higher level. Like overall, if we factor in the San Antonio game as well, I would say the Lakers' 3 best defensive performances have been 3 of the past 6 games, which is a promising sign. Like you could also say 2 of their maybe worst defensive performances of the season, or 2 of their 3 worst defensive performances have also been within this 6-game stretch. But it's been a little Jekyll and Hyde with the group overall, but I think the way they bounced back against New Orleans and Milwaukee, having their two closest things to like wire to wire emphatic wins all season, I think that's been encouraging. And again, this group's overall ability to be resilient, bounce back, and show some fight and some care in a way that like we have not always seen from Lakers teams of years past. I think, again, like this almost felt like a bonding experience on this road trip compared to this group splintering, which they easily could have splintered after the Atlanta game and after the OKC game. So successful, informative road trip. We learned more about this group. We learned about their margin for error. We learned about where they're at in the West and how they stack up with the very top of the West. And we learned what needs to be improved and refined and fine-tuned. We learned some positive things. We learned some negative things. But to not play your best basketball overall for the trip and still go 3-2, and I think, again, show some encouraging progress throughout the course of the trip, that to me is a win from a process perspective as well as a results perspective. Should they have probably gone 4-1 on this trip? Sure. Yes. Like that is the reality. That was my prediction. And I think that kind of played out in terms of, I thought they were going to lose to OKC, which they did. I thought it was going to be closer. It wasn't, but I thought they should have beat Atlanta. They should have beat Atlanta, but they learned from that. And I think you progressively saw a better version and a more locked in version of this team. And I think, as JJ likes to say, that will be a reference point moving forward, the Atlanta loss and the OKC loss. Now let's get into the notable performers from this game. We have to start with Luka, who already had his fourth 40-point game of the season, 41 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks, 3 turnovers, 9 of 19 shooting, 5 of 11 on threes, 18 for 20 at the free throw line. He nearly matched Milwaukee as a team single-handedly. He attempted 20 free throws. They attempted 24. What's funny is Giannis had 18 of those 24. So Giannis and Luka were both right there with 18 and 20 free throws respectively. But I think when factoring the defensive end, this might have been Luka's best two-way performance of the season. Certainly the 41 points is up there, right? And I think you could point at a couple of other games where you thought, like, the Charlotte game, 14 to 28, you didn't get to the free throw line as much, but his jumper was falling more. The San Antonio game dropped 35, 9 and 13 against them. Of course, the Memphis game, 44, 12 and 6. The Minnesota game, 49, 11 and 8. The Golden State game, 43, 12 and 9. Like, Luka has several games that you could point to in the conversation for best offensive performance of the season. But the defense tonight from Luka, again, 1 steal, 2 blocks. The official box score does not track deflections, but I will be interested to see how many deflections he had. He led the way to me in terms of the Lakers' shell defense tonight. Did an incredible job of building a wall. And for those who watched me on playback/YouTube, my 3 keys going into this game were: 1, building a wall against Giannis and preventing him from getting out in transition and getting downhill in the half court, and preventing him from getting to the rim. And look, there are some mixed results with that, right? Like, Giannis still had 32. He had 18 free throws. But overall, through the first half, Milwaukee only had 8 points in the paint, which is, again, a testament to the Lakers' first half defense. They ended this with 30 points in the paint, so 22 in the second half. But if I told you before the game Milwaukee was only going to score 30 points in the paint, you take that 10 out of 10 times. Like, that is a very low number for any team, let alone as paint heavy of a team as Milwaukee. So Luka was a big part of that with his help defense. And I thought he was very disruptive and locked in on that end. And they tried to challenge him several times and he held his own. So when factoring in the offensive performance and the defensive performance, and even the 6 assists could have easily been 8 assists, 10 assists, 12 assists if guys made shots off of Luka's passes. And he had a lot of hockey assists and hockey assist opportunities based on he was getting blitzed. They were trapping, blitzing, showing a lot of attention. He's passing out of it. So really, like, I don't know what else there is to say about Luka at this point. He's been incredible to start the season and is firmly in the MVP and best player in the world conversation. But plus 25 in his 38 minutes. The only thing I continue to harp on is like I would like to see the minutes go down a little bit. And I think once LeBron comes back, that will be the case. Austin, 25 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists. Similar to the New Orleans game, really took over in the fourth quarter. Had that stretch there in the middle of the fourth where he hit 3 threes. Every single one of those was needed. The Lakers offense was sputtering. I vehemently disagree with the combination. I believe the lineup that started the fourth was like Jackson, Vando, Jake, Dalton, Austin. I just talked about how problematic that lineup was last night, and it was problematic again tonight. And it was problematic in the OKC game. Like this configuration that JJ keeps going to of almost like Austin plus Dalton and Banshees, I just don't think is a winning formula. And the Lakers have been getting blitzed in those lineups, and they can't score and they can't defend. So I think that they got to really reassess the rotation, and that's like one, I guess, blemish from this game and really from the road trip is like the bench was very up and down for a lot of this road trip. But Austin hit several big shots. I thought from a playmaking perspective was doing a good job, and got going a little bit early, then turned into more of a playmaker. Then when the Lakers needed someone to make some shots, he took over for that stretch in the fourth. Jake LaRavia, 4 points, 6 rebounds, an assist, and 2 steals. He actually led the starters with a plus 26 plus minus. Could not make a shot to save his life. 1 for 10, 0 for 4 on threes. Had several point blank attempts like putbacks and offensive rebounds that he just missed. But I do think he helped overall defensively, was a part of LA's success. And again, led the team in plus minus, which isn't the end all be all, but I think is more reflective of like Jake. Even when he's not scoring, he is finding ways to contribute. DeAndre Ayton, 20 points, 10 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block. Got the Giannis assignment for a lot of the night. Did struggle with foul trouble, 5 fouls. But he was the ultimate safety valve, and I think he's the guy who improved the most from the OKC game to the New Orleans and Milwaukee games in terms of his positioning in the short roll, his finishing out of those plays, also his passing out of those plays. Didn't have an assist, but did, I think, make a lot of solid reads. Did have some issues with turnovers in the fourth quarter. I believe entering the fourth, 0 assists, 0 turnovers for him, ended up with 3. So for the road trip, he finished with 17 turnovers and just 3 assists. That is not going to cut it from a decision-making and processing standpoint from DeAndre Ayton. Turnovers have been a really big issue for him to start the season, but he did bounce back in a big way against New Orleans and against Milwaukee. I thought he held up really, as well as you can defensively against Giannis based on him being a center and having some limitations there. And again, like did his job tonight. And, again, coming off the OKC game, I thought really the first 3 games of the road trip, he to me was the common denominator in terms of I thought he was bad defensively in all 3 games. I thought he was subpar on the glass in all 3 games, and he has responded well over these past couple. Bronny James got the start, played 10 minutes, played 7 minutes in the competitive portion of the game, ends up playing the 3 minutes in garbage time. Was kind of just out there. I felt like he turned down, didn't have the defensive impact you would have wanted. I thought had some solid defensive possessions, but not like he's still not a lockdown defender. And then offensively, he took I thought a questionable off the dribble 3 early and then passed up 2 wide open catch and shoot 3s. And so it was tough because JJ obviously gave him an opportunity here to start. And it was a big call up, getting the start over Vando, getting the start over Dalton Connect. But with no Marcus, no Rui, this was a big opportunity for him, and it felt like a regressive performance from Bronny, going back to like the Miami game and the Portland game and like some of the stretches and flashes we had seen from him. That was not there tonight, and did have an assist, a rebound, a steal, but like he was the only starter in the negative in terms of plus minus, and I think this probably ends with him going back to being a garbage time player and not really in the rotation. Dalton Connect, 34 minutes off the bench, 9 points, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, 3 steals, 1 block. Defensively, I thought was active as a weak side guy. I think overall Dalton's been trending in a slightly positive direction. I plus 24 again led the bench in minutes. I will note when the Lakers went zone, he was the guy who kept getting burned with the AJ Green threes and the weak side threes, and part of the reason he was able to get 3 steals was because of the gambling and because of some of the zoning and where he was at on the weak side and some of those weak side reads. So like he did have some positive possessions there, but he also had several possessions where he was burned on the backside and misread the scouting report or misread how to play a situation and just gave up open threes. And in general, for as good as the Lakers defense was tonight, they gave up a slew of open threes, and Milwaukee hit 15 of 39. That easily could have been like 25 of 39, 27 of 39 based on like the shot quality. Milwaukee got a ton. They were 4 for 20 in the first half. That easily could have been like 12 for 20, 13 for 20. They got a slew of open looks. LA was just ignoring their shooters, packing the paint. And I think Dalton kind of played into that. Also 1 for 4 on threes. So his 2-point percentage has been really good this season. He's shooting over 60% on twos, but the threes continue to not fall consistently for him. So I think it continues to be a bit of a mixed bag. Like overall, I will note it was a positive performance from Dalton, but in terms of the 3-point shooting and the getting lost on defense, I continue to think that's still an issue with him. Maxi Kleber, I'm going to touch on him in a little bit. 3 points, 1 rebound, 3 assists. Lakers are plus 22 in his 25 minutes. Again, I'm going to touch on him a little bit more. Kleber Thiero made his debut. I'm going to touch on him a little bit more. 4 points, a rebound in his 5 minutes. So Adu and Maxi, I want to save for a second, in a second. Jackson, 10 points, 6 rebounds, an assist, 2 steals. I thought it was a good Jackson performance. Only played 17 minutes. I was surprised they didn't play him a little bit more, especially with Ayton being in foul trouble. But Jackson did his role in his minutes, and he had been someone who'd been struggling during this road trip. And I thought, close things out in a positive way. Nick Smith only played in garbage time. Then we get to Vando. And one thing that I quickly picked up on during the first quarter, and for those who were watching on playback, the chat was going wild about like, why didn't Vando start? Why isn't Vando playing? And people started to theorize, like, is Vando injured? We don't see him on the bench. Like, what's going on? And my theory, based on the way this road trip had been going, was that Vando got benched. And Vando got benched in the first quarter. The Lakers played 9 guys in the first quarter, including Maxi Kleber, who had not been playing. They started Bronny James, and Adu Thiero made his debut ahead of Jared Vanderbilt playing. So Vando just got straight up benched. I don't know what JJ said about it yet. I have not been, I was preparing my notes and stuff and eating a quick meal before going live. So I don't know if JJ has addressed this yet, but my read on the situation is Vando just got straight up benched in the first quarter. He did end up playing second quarter and fourth quarter to start those shifts in those problematic lineups. And he was a minus 11 in those 8 minutes. So I think Vando had probably the roughest road trip of anybody. And with the way that this is trending, JJ already had a very short leash with Vando. This was something I continued to harp on when people would throw out Vando as the 5th starter. And I was just like, his offense is so problematic, or his offensive limitations rather, are so problematic that he basically has to be an all-world defender to offset that. He has not been an all-world defender. And I think there's been a lot of mistakes even tonight. Didn't attempt a shot and had 2 turnovers. Like he's just giving you, he's not even giving you 0 on offense. He's giving you negative on offense. And I don't think the defense has been quite to the level that it needs to be. So he seems to be a guy who, even with this group shorthanded, this should have been a night Vando played 20 plus minutes, 25 plus minutes. He should have gotten the Giannis assignment for a lot of tonight. That was not the way this played out. And I do have questions about where this is trending in terms of his role in the rotation. And Rui's going to come back soon. It could be as soon as Tuesday. Marcus should be back by Tuesday. LeBron could be back by Tuesday. Gabe could be back at some point next week or shortly thereafter. As this group gets whole, it does feel like Vando is the odd man out. And with a couple more years left on his contract, that does make for a fascinating situation in terms of just his standing with the Lakers and where things are at. But I mean, there's no way around it. Like he got benched in the first quarter. he should have been a top 9 player based on who is available, and he clearly was not. And my interpretation was that was a message from the coaching staff to him. Now, in terms of the stat of the night, I'm going to hit on a number I referenced earlier, 100.6 defensive rating for the Lakers, their best defensive performance of the season. So season low, 95 points allowed, 100.6 defensive rating for a group that has struggled defensively, has been a below average defense basically all season. They are now trending. They might be a positive or, above average defense just off of this performance alone, which shows you how the numbers can sway this early in the season. But they've largely been a below average to bad defense, and they have now cobbled together a couple of impressive defensive performances. And I thought that to me was the most encouraging and just best number overall from tonight's game. Now I'll get through the 3 takeaways relatively quickly, then we'll get into the Q&A. Takeaway number 1, hitting on the defense, to me, best defensive performance of the season. So to me, this was the best win of the season and best defensive performance of the season. And I thought the Lakers' shell defense tonight was as good as it's been. Now, one of the early weaknesses and limitations with this group defensively has been closing out to shooters, and they often have to pick between trying to protect the paint, pack the paint, and spraying out to shooters. And unlike an OKC, who can make that rotation in like half a second, it takes the Lakers a little bit longer. It takes most of their defenders a little bit longer to, kind of rotate into the paint, rotate out to a shooter. And there is a version of this game where Milwaukee shot 59% on threes last night. They shot 38% tonight. If they shoot 59% on threes, which could have been in play based on the quality of shot that they were getting, this is a totally different game. And we're talking about probably a game that goes down into actual crunch time, and like the Lakers have to out execute them in the final minutes. That was not the case tonight. So they did get fortunate with the shooting performance from the Bucks. However, looking at 13 steals, 4 blocks, 17 stocks from this group. I don't know, again, the deflection numbers yet, but I assume it's got to be in the double digits. So I would assume this has to be up there, if not the number 1 performance from LA from a steals, blocks, and deflections perspective. And I thought they did a great job building a wall against Giannis for the most part. There were times he got downhill. There were times in the post where he drew fouls and whatnot. But I mean, looking at Milwaukee's other performers, right? Like AJ Green only hit threes, had 15 points on 5 threes. Ryan Rollins was held in check, 10 points, 4 for 11 shooting. Gary Trent, 13 points off the bench, hit 3 threes. But everybody else was in single digits, and no one else really got going offensively. Not Bobby Portis or Gary Harris or Miles Turner. Kuz went, he had a Tony Snell performance out there, 1 point, 0 for 6 shooting, 0 for 5 on threes. So like the Lakers, I thought, again, to a man, everybody showed up on the defensive end for the most part, and they were not perfect. There were plenty of breakdowns. And again, I think there's a scenario in which Milwaukee actually shoots the ball at a certain level where this is a closer game. But in terms of holding Milwaukee to just 30 points in the paint, 95 points overall, and outside of Giannis, no one else really getting into a consistent rhythm throughout the game, I think you have to give LA's defense a lot of credit. In addition to them missing Marcus Smart, who up to this point in the season has been their best perimeter defender, also missing Rui, who, I think overall is still, a part of the defense, right? Like he's been a minus defender overall, but compared to some of the other guys that were playing, like he's a better defender than Dalton, let's just say, right? And Dalton played 34 minutes tonight. So the Lakers, in theory, had a worse group of defenders playing. Vando only played 8 minutes. And yet they had their best defensive performance of the season. So you got to give Ayton a lot of credit. You got to give Luka a lot of credit. You got to give Austin credit. You got to give Jake credit. Maxey, Dalton for the off-ball playmaking he had. Jackson, like just the top 8 guys tonight, or top 7 guys, I think all deserve a lot of credit for the way that they defended and impacted the game. Takeaway number 2. This one is going to be for those who watch reality TV, but a couple of new bombshells have entered the villa. And what I mean by that is I think Maxi Kleber and Adu Thiero are real competition here for Jackson Hayes, and to a lesser extent, or actually to a greater extent, Jared Vanderbilt, and then maybe to a lesser extent, Dalton Connect. But like with the way that the rotation went tonight, And with who's going to be back, I think we can safely say DeAndre Ayton, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, and then either Marcus Smart or Rui Hachimura is the starting group. Whoever doesn't start is going to be the sixth man. So that's your top 6. Jake LaRavia is number 7. That is your top 7. Right now, we could pencil in Jackson Hayes as the 8th man. However, Maxi Kleber did outplay him tonight, and he played a hybrid of 5 and 4. He played next to Jackson, he played next to DeAndre, and he played 5 for various stretches there. Then you also have Gabe Vincent coming back. So I think Gabe will factor in. Maybe he ends up being the 8th man technically. And let's just say for now, it's Rui starting. Marcus, I think should be Marcus starting, but we'll see what happens there. Let's just say it's Rui starting. Then you got Marcus, Jake, Gabe. That's your top 8. Then 9, I think it's a real conversation there of, is Maxi ahead of Vando? Tonight, he played 3 times as many minutes as him. Is he ahead of Jackson? He played 8 more minutes than him. I don't know. Like, we have one data point here, one reference point, but Maxi was solid tonight. And the thing with him is the numbers aren't going to wow you, but 3 points, 1 rebound, 3 assists, 5 fouls, had some hard fouls tonight. But the plus 22 in 25 minutes, I want to highlight that because I think one thing with the Lakers bench that we've seen up to this point in the season, specifically with Vando, Dalton, and Jackson, is those are all high variance players. Some nights, those guys are crushing it. They are playing well. They're being impactful. They're being effective. They are locked into the game plan. They are not making mistakes, and they can be effective and impactful players. There are other nights where those guys are all train wrecks. And Vando is obviously wearing thin with the coaching staff up to this point in terms of his impact. Dalton, we know, has been in and out of the rotation and in and out of being a 1-shift player or a 2-shift player. He's been playing more progressively throughout the trip, but like Dalton, obviously for the defensive mistakes, forgetting plays, all that stuff has been in and out of trust with the coaching staff. Then Jackson, by default, was kind of had to play as the backup center, but he's another guy with the fouling, with the illegal screens, with the blown rotation sometimes. Like he can be up and down. So I think looking at a guy like Maxi is steady. Now you're not going to get the Jackson Hayes or Dalton or even Vando highs necessarily, unless he has like a crazy shooting performance. But you're not going to get the lows either. And I think Maxi out there was just like a steady, sturdy presence that, again, isn't going to wow you with the box score, but is going to do these little things. And I thought particularly the playmaking, either as a safety valve popping up, or as a guy, maybe the short roll playmaker gets it, hits it to Maxi, then he had a couple of off the dribble rips and then, driving kicks or reversing the ball or something. Like, he's just a smart basketball player who has been through the ringer, who has been in big playoff games, and is the type of guy that a coaching staff will trust. So as he continues to get into better shape, show that he can withstand a larger workload, I do wonder if he at least challenges. I mean, again, he played more than Vando and Jackson in a game that in theory, both of those guys could have been counted on more. And sure, he got some garbage time minutes there at the end, but like in the competitive portion of this game, Maxi played more than both those guys. So I do think that's real competition for those guys. And then the guy I've not mentioned yet, Kleber Thiero, he played 5 minutes, 2 minutes in the first quarter, 3 minutes of garbage time. In garbage time in particular, I really liked what we saw from him defensively. There was a certain level of aggression and ball pressure, and I liked his defensive strides, like just tracking a guy. Like I forgot who hit, someone hit a jumper on him. It might have been Andre Jackson. No, Andre Jackson went 0 for 1. I don't remember who hit the jumper over him late in the fourth, but like he tracked him on the drive and had a really solid contest, and the guy made a tough contested jumper over him. But like just that flash, and then he had the dunk, and he got to the free throw line and made a couple free throws, which, hey, for this rotation, making some free throws actually carries some weight for a group that has really struggled at times this season. I think Kleber Thiero, 5 minutes, season debut. We only saw a couple of short shifts from him, but as he ramps up, and remember, this is a guy who has not played in 8 months, had knee surgery, didn't play in training camp, didn't play in the preseason, didn't play in summer league. This was his first NBA action of any consequence. to have like a couple of flashes physically and athletically, I think Adu and Maxey are on the turf of Vando and Jackson and some of the other bench guys. And I do think there's levels to this, right? Where you notice I'm not saying like Jake LaRavia started tonight, played 37 minutes. Marcus has been starting. Gabe was starting before he got injured. I think those guys are all safe. So I'm not mentioning those guys for a reason. But when we look at Jackson, Dalton, Vando, I think all those guys, none of those guys have locked in roles right now. And I think all those guys are susceptible to having someone snatch their chain. So I think that's the way things are potentially trending right now. If Maxey continues to be a sturdy off the bench performer and Adu starts to ramp up, I think there's a real shot both those guys could be playing more substantial minutes and could be taking the roles ultimately of those other guys once everybody is healthy. And then takeaway number 3 before we get into the Q&A here. This one's going to be really quick, but the Lakers are 10-4 right now. They're on a 59 win pace, technically 58.57, but we will round up and say 59. So just to put that in perspective, like remember last year they were the 3 seed. They won 50 games. With Luka, I believe they were somewhere in the mid 50s, like a 55, 56 win pace team. So this is a little bit above that, like the games that Luka played in. But they're adding LeBron James. And I know there's been a lot of consternation about how LeBron's going to fit and whose production, like, is Luka going to be off the ball more? Is Austin going to be off the ball more? Is LeBron going to accept a lesser role? Like all these questions. And I just look at this group is going to get better adding LeBron James on both sides of the ball. And they're already nearly on a 61 pace. So that is unlikely to sustain. I do not think this group is realistically going to win 60 games. But they look like a group that's going to win 50 plus games, and you win 50 plus games in the West, you are almost certainly a top 4 seed, if not potentially a top 3 seed. I do think the top of the West right now, OKC is going to win 65 plus. Denver's looking like a potential 60 win team. Houston's looking like a high 50s win team. Those are probably the locked in top 3 seeds right now, especially when looking at point differential, net rating. They've been crushing everybody. But I think the Lakers are firmly in that number 4 spot right now with the potential to potentially jump to number 3, depending on, Denver just lost Christian Brown. Houston, you never know with their injury situation. So the Lakers are right there. And adding LeBron to this, I just do not see a scenario in which that's not a glaring positive on both sides of the ball. And again, for as good as Maxey was tonight in 25 minutes, for as good as Dalton, some of the flashes he had tonight, 34 minutes, Jackson 17. If you take away 36 minutes from that group collectively and just give it to LeBron James, this group is going to be better. I don't know what else to say. So I think, for as demoralizing as the OKC loss was, for as disappointing as the Atlanta loss was, the Lakers still had a 3-2 road trip. I think they learned a lot about themselves. We learned a lot about them, and they're about to add arguably the greatest player of all time to this group, who just finished 6th in MVP voting, 6th in All-NBA. There's a lot to be encouraged by, a lot to be happy with going into next week. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. One a little bit longer, but we had a lot to touch on. First one from Hammer Holding. Thank you for the super chat. I'm already a fan of Thiero. He's huge and athletic. Yes. And yes. And he plays with a certain motor that clearly is something that this group doesn't always have. So I think Thiero, I'm changing my priors on him, right? Like I don't want to overreact, and he's a rookie. He's a 2nd round pick, and he's a guy dealing with a knee situation. So we don't know the limiting factors with this knee moving forward, and if there will be setbacks or swelling in the future or whatnot, right? So I still want to temper expectations to a degree, but if you told me he just took Vando's minutes moving forward, and even if that's 8 to 12 minutes a night, I wouldn't be shocked. I think that is certainly in play here. Johnny, thank you for the super chat. Those are the best garbage minutes I've seen us play in a while. LMAO. Adu is a freak athlete. Excited to see him get some run with Luka. Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who can, if we look at the Lakers roster quickly, how many guys do you, outside of DeAndre and Jackson, who are 7-foot rim runners, how many of the other guys would you trust to finish a lob in a contested paint situation? I would say LeBron, although obviously as he's aged, he's tried to dunk less and like been less of a lob threat, but LeBron can do that. Rui, I think Rui has shown an ability to be a lob threat, but more so in like transition or more with like a certain runway. Beyond that, there's not a lot of like high flying dunkers on this team above the rim players. Adu can be that. And so there's a good chance that he's the third best lob threat on this team, and maybe even the second best ahead of DeAndre, who I think has looked more comfortable as a lob threat. But, you know, like Jackson is clearly the best lob threat. I mean, that one finish he had from Luka, I didn't know how he was going to grab that one. But I'm Adu. It was 5 minutes. It was 2 shifts, but he showed some stuff there. Logan, thank you for the super chat. Luka doesn't get enough for his defense. Yeah, I mean, I tried to highlight it earlier. I said it was arguably his best defensive performance of the season, best two-way performance of the season. But in general, yes, Luka does not get enough credit. And I think we've seen that's an area where the conditioning and being in a different level of shape this season, I think has really materialized. Like I've always said, I think he's a good off-ball defender in terms of the defensive playmaking and making reads and playing passing lanes. Like that's a big part of Luka's defense. But I think the difference this year has been his on-ball corralling of ball handlers and keeping guys in front of him. And of course, they're going to be the speedy, athletic guys who just blow by him. Like he has defense limitations. He's not an all defense guy, right? But he, I think, has held his own in a lot of those situations. And for someone who has a pretty negative defensive reputation, I just don't think that actually is the truth if you watch him defend on a nightly basis. Zach Wan, thank you for the super chat. In my opinion, we need a good point of attack. Parentheses, Keon Ellis, Ochai Agbaji, and Matisse Thybulle, a wing defender, Herb Jones or Najee Marshall, and a backup center, Day'Ron Sharpe or Goga Batadze, and maybe upgrade on DK with Sadiq Bey, Haywood Highsmith, Bryce Sensabaugh, and Ayo DeSumo. I mean, it's going to be hard to get all 4 of those upgrades. I do think that one, and I'm sorry for whoever's tweet this was that I'm now, not giving you the proper credit, but whoever you were that tweeted this, I co-signed this. Someone had a tweet earlier today that was basically like, they think the Lakers need a starting, like the 5th starter, basically that starting level wing. That's a 2-way wing, which I've been harping on all summer into the season, a backup center upgrade, which we'll see where things go with Jackson and Maxey. I think, potentially there's just you could go with a matchup based rotation there, but if you could get a big popular one is like Gafford. Sure. If you could get Daniel Gafford, that's obviously an upgrade over both Maxey and Jackson Hayes. And if it only costs you Gabe Vincent plus something, that's something. Now, whether Dallas will actually trade with the Lakers, I'm very skeptical of, but that's just an example of there are some clear backup centers that if you got them, it is a substantial upgrade over a Jackson, over a Maxey that you would be foolish to pass that up. Then the third thing is more of a downhill scoring / penetrating backup guard. And I agree with that to a degree because I think some of these bench lineups have just really struggled. And I think LeBron is going to come in and balance out the rotation. And certainly you could go to LeBron-led bench units. I think more realistically and more likely will be Luka-led bench units, and then Austin and LeBron led bench units, and they're going to leverage Austin and LeBron's synergy and their 2-man chemistry and the way that we've seen those two guys succeed. And, they've similar to what LeBron had with Alex Caruso, he and Austin have often been a plus minus duo together that they always win those minutes for the most part. So I think that'll help. But as we look at now with a little bit more of a sample size here with this group, right? And we look at Jake LaRavia, we look at Marcus Smart, we look at Gabe Vincent. You could throw in Nick Smith and Bronny to a lesser extent. You could throw in Dalton. There are some real offensive limitations collectively with that group, right? We've seen a certain ceiling from Jake, but we've also seen a floor, and a floor that's probably been a little bit more consistent from him, or like, I think he's been closer to his floor than his ceiling more often than not, point being offensively. And that does not mean he's not an effective player. That does not mean he shouldn't play a certain amount. And overall, he's still been, maybe not after tonight, but he had been the only other Laker outside of Rui who had been an above average 3-point shooter. That probably falls after tonight. And now the Lakers have one above average 3-point shooter in the rotation, which is its own thing here. But like Jake, you kind of know what you're getting offensively, and there is a real ceiling there, as we saw in the Minnesota game, and that little stretch there of 3-4 games. But for the most part, it has been a lot of like nights where you're kind of wishing he did a little bit more offensively. With Marcus, it's a wild ride. He's a plus minus beast, and he's probably their best perimeter defender. But the shots, I mean, you just went 1 for 10 on threes against New Orleans. Like, the shot selection and the turnovers at times can be problematic. We get to Gabe, who's, we know, very streaky shooter, and we'll have the 5 for 6 3-point night, and then we'll have the 0 for 5 3-point night, and he will be up and down. Dalton, again, has excelled inside the arc as an above 60% 2-point shooter, but outside the arc has been a below average shooter. Nick Smith and Bronny are not rotation players right now. So you just go down the list, and it's like, outside of the big three, and then to a lesser extent, Rui and DeAndre, there is a lot of offensive questions with this group in terms of shooting and passing and creation. And like, we've seen some, like, I think Marcus can be that playmaker and has had a lot of games already with 4 or 5 assists, and he could do some of that stuff. But there's a lot of incomplete offensive supplementary pieces here that I think they could potentially use one of those offensive minded guards or scorers off the bench. Now, I say all that to bring it back to this. It's going to be hard to check all these boxes, right? So I think Herb is the most interesting name here because he can be, in my opinion, a point of attack guy and a wing defender. But the Lakers are, if I had to bet like over under 1.5 trades, I would probably bet the under. I think 1 is much more likely than 2. And if they do a couple trades, it's probably 2 at the most. So in theory, you could do a couple of trades where you are addressing 3 or 4 needs, but I think that's pretty unlikely. So I think they're going to have to pick. The big one is the wing starter. That's where you get to the Herb, to a lesser extent, a Najee Marshall. I don't know if Keon Ellis can be that guy. I think Thibault and Agbaji are more bench guys. And maybe you get the backup guy, but I think it's going to be the backup center. But I think it's going to be tough to address all these. That said, like, I don't disagree with any of the points you're making. I think it would be great to add a point of attack defender. I think it would be great to add a wing defender. I think it would be great to add a backup upgrade. And I think it would be great to upgrade on Dalton. It's just, we're talking about now like almost a third of the roster being brand new, and that's easier said than done, especially during the season compared to the offseason. That's more of an offseason project for LA. Jeremiah, always with the banger questions here. Thank you for the super chat. Would you rather have a Lakers Banga jersey or Madsen jersey? That is a tough one. That is a tough one. Mark Madsen will always have a special place in my heart for the dancing at the parade. The can you dig it? And then what with Banga, it's always remember the hey you guys. So it goes both ways with both of those guys. I'll say Banga. I will say Banga, but it's close. Those are 2 all-time Lakers. All right, back into the chat here. GeoBase says Vegas in the house. Shout out Vegas. It's probably the second city I'm in the most. Adam Habib, it looks like Jake was looking for his shot earlier on in the season. Yeah, he's kind of gone through almost like a bell curve here where it was like he was a bit passive to start. Then he started to be more aggressive and assertive, and then he has gone back down to being a little bit more passive. But quickly looking at his game logs, so start of the season, not as involved, gets a little bit more involved in that Sacramento game, goes 3 for 10. Then the breakout performance is at Minnesota, 10 for 11, at Memphis, 5 for 8, versus Miami, 10 for 13, at Portland, 5 for 10. Then from that point on, over this past stretch of 6 games, including the full road trip and the San Antonio game, it's been downhill. 3 for 9, 4 for 7 against Atlanta, but like I kind of throw out everyone's performance against Atlanta. 2 for 8 versus Charlotte, 1 for 6 versus OKC, 3 for 4 versus New Orleans, but I'd like to see that 4 number be a little bit higher than 1 for 10 against Milwaukee. And looking at that stretch on threes, 1 for 5, 1 for 2, 0 for 3, 1 for 4, 0 for 0, 0 for 4. So he's been struggling from deep really since the Miami game. And outside, like once he became more involved in the offense, he's really only had a couple of above average 3-point shooting games that have carried some of his numbers. So yeah, I mean, you would like, I think overall, look, this guy's making $6 million. He's clearly outperformed that and been a value, and I think has been an important role-playing connecting piece. But the Lakers, I think, have needed a little bit more offensively from him, and we've seen some of the limitations, at least currently. Like, he's 23 years old. He should be getting better. I think he will be getting better. And I think he might just be one of these guys that the Lakers coaching staff has to continually check in on and be like, yo, we need you offensively. Like, you are, in theory, there. I don't know where I'd put him in the pecking order, but clearly there's a top 5. And then I think there is like Marcus could be the 6th guy, or Dalton could be the 6th guy, or Jake could be the 6th guy. Like, you could make a case for Jake being the every night 6th man in terms of like actual shot distribution and hierarchy and offense. And I think they need to, kind of pump that into him more, where it's like, yo, like we need this from you. And I thought tonight he had some bad luck with, like, had several tip-in point-blank opportunities that he missed, that sometimes those things happen. I don't think he's like a poor finisher necessarily, but I think more so the 3-point shooting is where I would like to see a little bit more reliability. Mitch Potter, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. I appreciate it. Gary Singh, thank you for super chat. What happened to Kuzma? Lakers left him open on threes. Kuzma again had the Tony Snell tonight, with 0 points or 1 point in 20 minutes, 0 for 6 shooting. Let's see what he is on the season. Going into tonight, 32% on threes. So that's probably going to be under 30 now after going 0 for 5. Yeah, Kuzma's just not been ever since he left LA. Look at his 3-point shooting, 34. So last year with the Lakers, not the title year, but the title defense year, 36%. Goes to Washington, 34, 33, 33.6. So we'll round up, say 34. So 34, 33, 34, 28. First half of last year in Washington, gets traded to Milwaukee, jumps up to 33, then is back to 32 this season. And again, after tonight, will probably be under 30. So yeah, he's just been a streaky shooter. And I mean, still over that stretch is 17 points a game, 21 points a game, 22, 15, 15, 14 and a half this year. So, right there, almost at 15. He does give you a certain baseline as a scorer, but also the free throw shooting has not been there the last couple years. 60%, 63%. This year back up to 80, which would be a career high. But he's an interesting player because he kind of is in some ways like I think kind of similar to Rui in a way, where he's like a tweener forward who has some limitations, where like he's almost too good in theory to be a bench player, but he's also not like the perfect starter either. Obviously with Kuz, he's not the shooter Rui is, but I would say he's a better defender than Rui is, though he got shredded by Luka. Should not have been guarding Luka tonight. Better rebounder than Rui. Probably better passer too. He's had several years averaging around 4 assists, but he's just kind of in this in-between zone where I'm not quite sure. He's maybe more of a six man, I think, in an ideal situation, but obviously for Milwaukee, he has to play a certain role. Sarah says, Najee Marshall loves Luka, would love to have him as a Laker. Yeah, I do view him more as a bench player than as the fifth starter. So if there's a way to trade for, if Dallas is even willing to entertain a trade with the Lakers and you could get Max Christie and Najee Marshall or Daniel Gafford and Najee Marshall, I like either one of those paths or all three. If there's, I mean, I think the money would work technically depending on who you're sending out. Amaris, we need to find a 3-and-D gem like Saddiq Bey. No one is really trading for him. I don't think Saddiq is good enough defensively for what the Lakers like. The way I'm looking at the fifth guy, I think I've thought about this a lot clearly, and the thing I've kind of settled with in terms of my breakdown of it is it needs to be a player who is within the vicinity of Marcus Smart defensively. Ideally better than Marcus Smart, but at least in the vicinity of him defensively, and an upgrade over him offensively. And with Saddiq Bey, I don't think he's in the vicinity of Marcus Smart defensively. I think overall, he's an upgrade as a finisher in terms of both 2-point finishing around the basket and also 3-point shooting, but definitely a different type of player. But I don't think... He's also, to me, more of like a 3.54 where it again kind of pushes you into that, like he sort of defends the same positions, same type of players as Luka and LeBron and even Rui, if Rui's not in the trade. Whereas I think you want someone who could defend. I really want someone who could defend 1 through 3 if I'm the Lakers. Like that is the sweet spot. Maybe even 1 through 4, but it has to be 1 through 3. And that's where, to me, Herb Jones continues to be the best guy, though he comes with his own issues offensively with the shooting and also the injuries. Ben Tucker, thank you for the super chat. Good win, good future, and I'm happy thinking about how many bullets we've dodged under Rob, Kawhi, Murray, AD, even DFS, Ingram, and Rob, we trust. Well, that'll get the chat going. You know how to do it, Ben. Agree on good win, agree on good future, and I do agree that the Lakers have dodged bullets under Rob. The Kawhi situation, I mean, that's self-explanatory, but they had certain aspirations. They didn't work out, but they dodged one. DeJounte Murray was one that I think at one time it made sense depending on the price, but they were not willing to give up Austin, and that I think proved prescient, excuse me. AD, I mean, obviously, that one I don't know. I have a little bit of a problem with the way AD is being discussed and dissected, but you know, I have a little bit of an issue with AD. And not with AD, with the way AD is being covered right now. I think people are throwing a lot of dirt on AD's name that's unnecessary. And I don't think that trade had as much to do with getting out of the AD business as it did with getting into the Luka business. I mean, how many, if it didn't matter who that guy was, how many guys would you not trade for Luka, right? Maybe Wemby. I mean, probably Wemby. I mean, Jokic. The guys that have you could conceivably be I would not trade this player for Luka. It's Wemby, Jokic, Giannis, Shea. Those are the 4 guys. And I'm not saying Luka's the fifth out of that, but if you're OKC and the Lakers offer you Luka, you could make that trade, or you could at least be we want to keep Shea. Right? Those are the 4 guys that I think you can at least argue you should not trade for Luka. Everybody else you trade for, including Ant. You give up for Luka in a heartbeat. So I don't want to put that on AD of well, the Lakers got out of the AD business because I think it was more so just getting into the Luka business and how great Luka is. DFS, yes, that has been one that they dodged this summer, and looks like some of the stuff with his ankle obviously was problematic. And Ingram, I assume this is, now we're going way back with the Brandon Ingram stuff and some of the baby Lakers stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, I would also, flip side is Alex Caruso. I mean, THT was a non-dodged bullet. Them investing in THT, Dalton Connect, Jalen Hood-Schifino. Like, there's been some bullets the Lakers have not dodged either. Rod notes Zubats. I blame more on Magic, but Rob was technically complicit. Mitch Potter says one of Jovan's favorite players to cover was AD. I remember him saying that. Yeah, but that's true. This isn't even about that though. I think my like, you know, I don't know. I just feel like people have been throwing dirt on AD's name, and look, I get it. He did not come into camp in the best shape, and he's been injury riddled for most of his career, and especially in Dallas now. It's been rough. He's got a lot of vitriol like thrown at him. And I just feel like AD is a good dude. He was a Laker great. And I just feel like people are being a little too hard on him. We got the listen, Ben. We got the chat going though. You got the chat. This has been great. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Like Kleber, fits with Ayton. Works well on defense to have another big to play big, and still gives Lakers good offensive spacing for Luka to operate. Yeah, I mean that'd been something I'd been talking about a little bit more recently of the potential of LA going to a double big look, and I thought it looked good tonight because Kleber is a floor spacer, and especially for a group that, as aforementioned, has not shot the ball well collectively for the most part. Like having another guy who could theoretically, like Kleber has not shot the ball as well the last couple of years in the NBA, but for his career has been an above average 3-point shooter and has the institutional knowledge with Luka. So you put that guy out there with Ayton or with Jackson, and yeah, like offensively, I think it works because he's basically a perimeter player offensively. He's a shooter. And then defensively, you do have the more conventional big look, but Kleber, he can move those puppies. He can move his feet defensively. So yeah, I do. Tonight was a big reference point in favor of Kleber. Mason Russ. Yeah. I'd blocked that one out of my memory, but you are correct. That's the biggest miss of all. Toon Spade, Jovan, why are we on game 14 and 3 back-to-backs while others have only played 11 games? Yeah, I mean, the flip side to this is Lakers now get a break next week with only 2 games, a rare 2-week game week, or 2 game week, excuse me, in the NBA. They get the 4 days off in between Tuesday's game versus. Not only that, they get Utah twice, and Utah's been a little feisty. They've been, they've punched above their weight to start the season. They're technically the 10 seed right now, tied with the aspiration Clippers at 4-8. But Utah's going to come back down to earth. I think they're really going to miss Walker Kessler as the season progresses, and so Lakers should go 2-0 next week. They should end next week 12-4, and they should be getting LeBron back. And I think that kind of evens it out, having a 2 game week with 4 days in between the 2 games, right? So it's not like even a Tuesday, Friday type of week. It's a Tuesday, Sunday type of week. So rough start in terms of, to your point, the back-to-backs, how many games they've played. I mean, going through the West, so Lakers have played 14. OKC's at 14. Denver's at 12. Houston's at 11. San Antonio, 12. Phoenix, 13. Minnesota, 13. Golden State, 14. Portland, 12. Utah, 12. Clippers, 12. Memphis, 14. Sacramento, 13. Dallas, 13. New Orleans, 12. So a couple of 11s in there with Houston. I guess Houston's the only one that's played 11, but a couple of 12s, a couple of 13s. So like, yeah, Lakers are on the high side in terms of games played. Gary A, who pairs better with Luka's game, Giannis or Jokic? Giannis. And no shade at Jokic. I mean, you guys know how I feel about Jokic, but I do think that both guys are in their primes. Both guys are at the best, their respective teams are at their best with the ball in their hands. And is there a way that I almost called him Lokic, that would be their nickname, Luka and Jokic could work together? Of course, right? Like, they're both basketball geniuses, two of the best passers ever, two of the best offensive players ever, offensive hubs ever. There is a way that this could work. We've seen Jokic work with Murray. We've seen Luka work with Brunson and Kyrie and now LeBron and Austin. And like, they could figure it out. But actually, the bigger thing would be, like, despite me saying on playback and earlier today, like, singing the praises of Luka's defense and even talking about Jokic's defense as well, like, they're not all defense guys. And especially in Jokic's case, because of, I think he's an underrated rim protector, but still, like, he's not Rudy Gobert. He's not Wemby. There are some limitations there defensively with him being your last line of defense. I think it gets a little challenging to build a really strong defensive unit. Like, you have to over-index, I think, with athleticism and defense around those two. But I think Giannis and Luka, it's just a more natural pairing, especially if you got to get Giannis to buy into fully being like a screen and roll big. But just imagine Giannis getting some of the looks that DeAndre Ayton and Jackson Hayes have gotten, that Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford have gotten. Like, Giannis is the apex, like, evolved version of all those guys, right? With his finishing ability and the size and the athleticism and the length and all that stuff. So I do think, and then Giannis also comes with a certain level of defense that, I think would naturally fit better with Luka. So I think Luka and Giannis would be the better pairing. King Rifa _Chifa, one of the best names in the game. Thank you for the super chat. What up, Jovan? Adu might be interesting in time. When Braun is back, what's the lineup? Also, AD treated like he didn't help us win a title. People hating bad. Yeah, he's getting probably the most hate from the Dallas fans, and I get it, because he's never going to be Luka to them. He's never going to be Luka. He's never going to be Luka to them. And Dallas is in a tough spot, but, like, I think people have really over-indexed on just the AD negativity. In my opinion, what the lineup should be would be Ayton, LeBron, Marcus, Austin, Luka, with the top 9, Rui, Jake, Gabe, Maxey Jackson. That's probably my top 10. And then Vando and Dalton are like 11 and 12, depending on the matchup. And then, Adu's in the mix. I like second round pick coming off 8-month injury. I want to, but could he ascend into being even the number 9 spot ahead of Maxey? Sure. Possible. And then I think Bronny is, I think up to this point, like, pretty clearly the number 14 guy. I think it's hard to argue him above that. So yeah, I mean, I think Adu probably has a range of 9 to 13 in the rotation, depending on what the restrictions are because again, he played 5 minutes. Like, I haven't heard or seen anything yet, but I don't know how much of that is on, like, minutes restriction, first game back in 8 months. Like, I think Lakers have been cautious for the most part this entire season. So we'll see how long it takes him to get ramped up. Lakers villain 22. Thank you for the super chat. Are Monk / Ellis realistic? Kings don't trade with us. The last part is a real factor. The Kings hate the Lakers, and I think that is a bit of a limiting factor in a potential trade. I think between these two, Keon Ellis is far more likely than Malik Monk, just if only from a contract perspective, where pulling up Malik Monk's. Damn, this rain. I don't know if you guys could hear this. This rain is going crazy right now. It sounds like a tsunami out there. 18.8 million for Malik Monk this year, 20.2 next year, 21.6 the following year. So that's a little bit of a tricky contract versus 2.3 for Keon. So you get to Keon. I think the one I've thrown out before that I think could make some sense for both sides, depending on, well, for the Kings, it's just like they love offense. Like Dalton in a second, I think is interesting. That if you talk to Kings fans, that wouldn't be enough. If you talk to the Kings front office, I don't know, right? Like they've made some questionable trades and moves, and they seem to overvalue offense compared to anything else that they want. They kind of want to be the Warriors, but minus the defense that made the Warriors special. So I don't know. I would say semi-realistic, more so realistic for Ellis than Monk. Monk does check the box of the type of bench scorer, playmaker, shot creator that I mentioned. He's just making a lot of money that, I mean, you could theoretically get both of those for Gabe and Maxey. But yeah, one thing with Monk, and you know, I was asked about Clay earlier during the playback, and I was sharing some of my concerns with potentially trading for Clay. Like, I do believe in player role and buy-in as like really important factors for potential trades. So from a talent perspective, like, would you rather have Malik Monk than Gabe Vincent? Yes. Talent perspective, would you rather have Klay Thompson than Gabe Vincent? Yes. Both players are better players than Gabe Vincent. However, you can probably get away with Gabe Vincent as your 8th or 9th man. And like, he might not love it, but he's going to be a good soldier. He's going to buy into the role. He's going to be a professional. He's going to show up every game. And you're not really going to have many concerns about Gabe Vincent, whether he's playing 15 minutes a night or 25 minutes a night. With a guy like a Malik Monk or a guy like Klay Thompson, and just like a scorer of a certain caliber, a guy who's had success in the league as an offensive player, if you're trading for those types of guys, they're going to want to start or play basically be the 6th man. And for as much as the Lakers could use a better shooter like a Klay or a better like bench scoring guard like a Monk, if they're changing the rotation and it's like, let's start Rui as the 5th guy and then Klay Thompson as the 6th man or Malik Monk as the 6th man, now you are completely over-indexing on the offensive end. And I think that's a really problematic formula for this group. So I like, if Malik Monk is willing to buy into a role where some nights he plays 15 minutes, some nights he plays 28 minutes, and there's a little bit of a fluctuation there based on his performance, based on the matchup, I'd be cool with that. But to me, he's almost too good for that role and would expect to play more than that. And that's where I get a little bit hesitant with some of the offensive-minded guys where I'm like, because Malik Monk is a clear minus defensively. You know, that's just, and I think Klay is too now. So I don't love the idea of adding like a 30-minute-a-night guy who's also a minus defender into this rotation. I think that's the opposite of what the Lakers need. Dan Howard, thank you for the super chat. Austin's been a monster in the 4th this season. That is correct. And it's making me want to pull up his numbers in the 4th. I'm just curious for the group. If we go to the Lakers here and we pull up the players and we split it up into the 4th quarter on a... Austin leads the team in 4th quarter scoring, 8 points per game. Luka's not far behind at 7.4. Austin is shooting splits in the 4th, 56, 46, 91. So 56% overall, 46% on threes, 91% on free throws. Luka's at 49, 16, 82. So 49% overall, 16% on threes, 82 on free throws. So the only thing with Luka's, the threes haven't been falling. But yeah, Austin also rebound and a half, assist and a half a steal. So yeah, I mean, by Luka's plus minus is better in the 4th of note. Luka's averaging more rebounds and assists slightly, but I mean, you could argue Austin's been their best 4th quarter performer. I think it's close between him and Luka, but yeah, Austin's been a beast. Michael D, thank you for the super chat. Giannis class act getting the game ball to a dude. Do you know why the officials are being so difficult about it? Personally, never seen that happen. It's a good question. A lot of times they will promise the game ball to someone. So I wonder, and like there is a whole protocol with it, with like the sort of the process of, I think the refs are technically supposed to take it and then hand it or have it delivered to the player afterwards. So I'm guessing it was probably had more to do with that. I also think technically the home team has the first crack at like claiming the ball. So typically especially if like, the home star gets 56 or whatever, right? Like then they get the ball. So I think there's probably a couple of things of they were first testing if Milwaukee wanted it, and it had to go through like the proper channels. But it is a class act from Giannis, and I'm glad Adu got his first game ball. Laker Pride, thank you for the super chat. Jovan, I know you spent a lot of time in Vegas. Are you familiar with a town called Laughlin? That's where I'm from. People come for the river. I am. I have not really spent much time over there specifically, but my son lives in Henderson, so I'm often in Henderson. And I've actually ran into some Laker fans and late night gang around there. But yeah, so definitely, like, I'm usually there at least once a month or so. So, I was just there a little over a week ago. So yeah, but that's cool. Shout out to the greater Vegas area. And that it's been, he's been out there for a few years. So it's been interesting seeing like the development and the rise of that area. And it seems like they're going to be in line for an NBA team soon. Adam, thank you for the super chat. Does Austin have a chance to get most improved player this season and to be an all-star this season? Yes and yes. So for those who tune into Beyond the Block, I just did in awards, way too early awards. That was the official title of the episode. Like fully acknowledging we were 10 games into the season at that point, or 10, 11. And of course it's just a snapshot of where things are at now. But I had Austin as my most improved, with the caveat that I knew he probably wasn't going to win, and that it seems like Josh Giddey's probably the favorite for it. But my argument for Austin was like, you could argue that we had not seen him, like, yes, his numbers have been better without LeBron, without AD, without Luka. Going back to last year, he's had the big performances, but like just his night to night consistency has been at a certain level. And I would even argue, like, outside of the OKC game, he's basically been like 24, 25 a night, 7-8 assists, pretty solid percentages. Like he's been pretty consistent for the most part. And obviously he's had like the really high highs, 51 point near triple double, 41 point game, 28 and 16 with the game winner. Like, but yeah, I mean, I think cause in my opinion, right, there's a couple ways to go with most improved is like, you go with the young guy who I think Ryan Rollins is like is a strong contender for most improved, because he's a young guy who like didn't have major draft capital. He bounced around a bit. He's been on multiple teams, didn't really pop. And then all of a sudden he's looking like a solid starting level point guard. That is like a notable improvement, notable development. There's also like the young ascending player who's like in year 4, year 5, maybe even year 3. And they take a certain jump statistically that you're like, that validates their improvement. But I think the 3 guys I had on my ballot that to me are a different type of most improved archetype, but to me sometimes get overlooked, are like the players who go from solid or good, like solid to good or good to great. And the 3 guys for me this season that have all done that are Austin, Josh Giddey, and Denny Avdia. And, Denny averaging like a real jump in his points, like 7-8 points per game into the mid 20s, and has been the number 1 on a Portland team that is looking like a real threat as a play-in / playoff team to like achieve, exceed expectations, and be a 7 or 8 seed potentially. Josh Giddey leading the Bull, like they had the 6-1 start. They've obviously come back down to earth. They're now 6-5. They've lost 4 in a row, but Josh Giddey averaging 22, 8 and 9 as the best player on that team, as the engine of that offense. was not something I thought did I think he could be a starter? Yes. Did I think he could be a starting point guard? Yes. Did I think he could be an all-star level engine of a good team? Not really. And he showed flashes of this last season, obviously, but I think he's even leveled up from there. Same thing with Denny, and then Austin, similar. But there's a lot of different guys. I think Ryan Rollins, I think Jalen Duren is another one. Keontae George is another one in Utah. Most improved, you could probably make a list of 30 guys and make a strong argument for any of them. But Austin, most improved, I think probably doesn't win it because he doesn't check the traditional boxes of it. All-stars, yeah. Right now he's right now he would be an all-star. Now, the tricky thing is they're trying to do this thing where it's 24 players, but it's 16 US, 8 international. So naturally there's going to be international guys anyway, right? Because I think the top 5 players in the league are all international with Luka and Jokic and Giannis and Shea and Wemby. So that's 5 of the 8, I think, locked in already. But can Austin be a top 16 American player? I think so, but there might be a situation where he and LeBron kind of cannibalize each other, and ultimately, if LeBron hits a certain threshold of games played, he's probably going to miss out on the awards, but I could see LeBron making the All-Star team above Austin potentially, depending on his numbers and depending on how healthy he is from now through the voting process. All right, back into the chat. This rain is crazy. Again, I don't know if you guys can hear this. What was Connor's question? Did I miss it? Was it a super chat? I think I got all the super chats. So what's let's see what Connor says. Are there any players that aren't currently available for a trade who you think may come available closer to the deadline, either from their team being bad or other trades shaking things up? I also see he followed it up with, damn it, man, it's so hard to predict when Jovan is done with the question to send mine in the chat, LMFAO. I'm sorry. Your boy can yap. I went to Yappers University. There's a couple of answers here because I could see if you're the Clippers. The Clippers are probably more likely to go in the desperation route because of their pick situation and them being so all in now. But do the Clippers at some point have a bit of a, not like a fire sale, but for the right price, you could, it becomes a bit of a sunk cost. And it's hey, if someone's willing to meet a certain threshold to price someone from us, would we do that? And could a Derrick Jones Jr. become available? But then I come back to it's the Clippers and they're not going to trade with the Lakers. And if the Lakers are looking like a top 4 team in the West and they're a Derrick Jones Jr. away from taking another step, you think the Clippers are going to give the Lakers Derrick Jones Jr.? I don't think so. So, and then, that caveat probably applies to the Kings to a lesser degree where they're not going to look. And then you got the Mavericks, 3 of the bottom 5 teams in the West right now are the Clippers, the Kings, and the Mavericks. And I just don't see them trading with the Lakers. Then you have the Pelicans who, they have Joe Dumars who has his own history with the Lakers as a, former Piston and the bad blood there through the years. But I think looking at the West, a couple names I've referenced before, I think Herb in New Orleans could be available for potentially a certain price, in just New Orleans, letting anybody be had for the right price other than maybe Fears and Queen. With Memphis, if Memphis really goes off the rails, do they just pull the plug on the Triple J tenure and is a guy like KCP become available again? And maybe Lakers have a KCP reunion. Utah doesn't really have anybody that stands out as a realistic option. They're not trading Walker Kessler, especially now where they might get him at a discount. Portland, as aforementioned, I think someone in playback said the last time they traded with the Lakers was 1984, which was a long time ago. Then you get to Golden State, Minnesota. Phoenix is looking less likely to trade with the Dillon Brooks situation, or less likely to trade Dillon Brooks because of how they are performing. Right now, Phoenix is a 6 seed, which is crazy. Then looking east, this is where you got Miami, who's slipping, lost a couple in a row, 5-5 over their past 10 games, 7-6 overall. Does that affect Wiggins' availability? Then Charlotte, I guess Miles Bridges is a guy, but I've talked about the complicated nature of potentially trading for him and some of the questions you're going to have to address if you acquire a Miles Bridges and some of the backlash you will likely receive, and in my opinion, deservedly so. Then you get like Brooklyn. I mean, I don't know who you want there. Indiana continues to be the team that I don't think will give up on their players. Maybe they give up on some of the bench guys, but I don't see them giving up on Nesmith. So I think in some ways this has not, it's not trending in like the best direction of like the best guys all be like, again, like Brooks and Wiggins are two guys we had highlighted going into the season who might not even be available right now, depending on how their teams continue to do. So I think it's still a little bit too early. We're still a month out from the real trade season starting. So I think we'll have a better, sense there. I think the whole other part to this question is like, do any stars shake loose? And, does Ja become available? Like, I don't think Ja makes sense for the Lakers, but like, that's a guy who there's always like a ripple effect on the trade market too, right? Because maybe a team makes a trade and then a certain other, that changes the price of a player, or now a different player becomes available, or now they have a different need, and then they make a trade, and then there's like a chain reaction to trades. So yeah, that's my answer on that. You guys talking about the box score at ESPN? Oh no, something else. Never mind. Ryan Rich asking about Brett Siegel's article. I didn't read all of it. I pretty much saw the NBA Central version of it. I like Brett, and one thing I continue to say is I never go against anybody who's reporting. That's not my style, and I wouldn't want anyone to try and go against my reporting. So, as a reporter, I think that's like hollowed ground, right? But from what I saw, I think a lot of it checks out. Like I talked about on playback, I had heard that things were not in a good spot between AD and the Lakers before before even the Luka trade. It was like directly after he did the ESPN interview, I heard that the Lakers did not like that, and they were really upset with him about doing the Shams interview and sort of throwing Rob under the bus about wanting to play the 4 and asking them for other centers, and they did not like that page of his playbook. So now, did that lead to them trading him for Luka? No, because as I said earlier, you trade AD for Luka 10 out of 10 times, regardless of whether you're happy with him or not. But I had heard that directly at the time. That was even before the Luka trade. And I didn't think at the time it was going to lead to an AD trade, but I was like, this is interesting because AD's got this contract extension coming up, and I wonder how that is going to affect that at all. But that's kind of it, unless you guys have any further, questions about that. Michael D says, I had no idea Jovan had a tattoo. I have 6 tattoos. Your boy is tatted up. I actually wish I had more. Rudio, I'm seriously just grateful on the position we are in right now. We're not too distant from 2 seasons ago when the Darvin Lakers were 2-10. I was going to those games and it was so depressing. Yeah. Lakers are in a good spot. There's no way around it. That was my third takeaway. Like, Lakers are in a really good spot. Brent, Cam Whitmore, maybe. I think, he does seem like a guy who might go on a Michael Porter Jr. Style podcast tour at some point, but we'll see. Mo Love, good point on I'm thinking Charlotte won't trade with us after the Mark Williams trade. That did get pretty personal. Chris, you're forgetting DK. I'm not sure what this is in reference to. MJ, hit the like button. Chat, yeah, let's get those likes up. Appreciate you. Again, I don't know if you guys can hear this, but this weather is going wild right now. Omaris, any prediction on when LeBron comes back? I think it's trending toward Tuesday. I'd say it's probably 60-65% Tuesday. The big thing I have heard is it's going to be that Monday practice, how he looks, how he feels, and whether they think he's ready to play on Tuesday. And then if not, they do get the big break until Sunday. So my original prediction was Sunday. With how he's apparently looked in the G League practices, and from what I've heard, it's trending more toward Tuesday. Also makes some sense to make typically guys like to make debuts in a home situation. It's just more comfortable, and you get the home crowd behind you and all that. I mean, if LeBron plays Tuesday, the crowd is going to be crazy. It's going to be a fun atmosphere. So that is the way I think that's trending. But again, with the caveat that if for whatever reason there's a setback, or Monday they just don't feel like he's quite ready, they want to give it a little bit more of a ramp up, Sunday would be the time. But I'm fairly confident he's going to return next week, unless there's a big setback, which again, we'll only know if it happens. Eric asks what kind of tattoos, like a tribal stamp. No, I'm not. So I have a few here. I don't know if you guys can see. So this is 426. It's kind of blurry because it's focused on my face, but so that's it's actually crazy. My son, my brother, and my best friend all have the same birthday. So 426 is mainly for my son, but also to a lesser extent for both of them. I have the drama signs there, the laugh now, cry later, which is for my mom, who is an actress. And then I have the only one I semi-regret. I have here, again, you guys, it's Nothing is Permanent. That was more of a, moody, impulsive Jovan in his early 20s, but was in his feels, listening to a little too much Drake, and I got a Nothing is Permanent tattoo. But that is the one that is the conversation starter at parties. Anyone sees that, and it's automatically they want to talk about it. Then I do have this is harder to do on I do have an owl tattoo, and I think that's sort of self-explanatory, but in actuality, not to get too esoteric on here, but I'm a night owl. This is why it's the Late Night Gang. And ever since I was 14, 15, I've been going to bed at 1:30, 2 a.m. or later every night. So that's feels like that's my spirit animal. And of course, I like owls for certain reasons. And I got a dragon here. My dad's name is Dragon. And I got a bee, which is technically a Serbian V in Cyrillic, but my great uncle, who passed in 2010, he had this pendant that was a Serbian V, but it looks like a B. It kind of looks like a boot. It's a Cyrillic V, and that was my first tattoo that I got. So now you guys know a little bit more about me. Dubgadi OVO Buha. It's OVO adjacent. It's not full. It's not full OVO. Chris, 426 is officially the Buha holiday. Yeah. MB, wait, you have a son? Yes, I do have a son. Hotline Bling is a good song. I knew I liked this guy for a reason. Mo Love says, my spirit animal is Keith Richards. Yes. Well, so, I mean, not to get too deep on you guys, but I've always been told by, I'm kind of the person always in my friend group and my inner circle that people come to for advice, because I'm very good at looking at situation. I mean, in some ways I'd like to think, some of my basketball analysis can apply to real life situations, where I do try to look at both sides of a situation, make counterpoints and stuff. So I've been told I'm wise and give good advice and give good perspective. So I'm also an introvert. So like you couple that up of like being a night owl, introvert, someone who likes to think to the point of overthinking. Like an owl is basically that's my thing. Boji, does Braun know you got those owl tats? No, I don't know. I usually have sleeves on at games because I'm always wearing like a jacket or something long sleeve. It's probably not, but Braun and I have discussed Drake before. I will share that. I do not know your name because I cannot read the characters. However, you said Buha is a mini white Shaq, and that is the highest praise that I have ever gotten. And it might even have to go in my Instagram and X as a direct quote, because that is the best thing I've ever heard in my life. INTP. Yeah. Sarah, we need a Dear Jovan advice column. Hey, if you guys want to write in some stuff, I mean, like, that's Rosillo's thing, the life advice, but, all right, let's get into, you guys got more questions here. I'm going to go, I have nothing to do tonight, so let's roll for 2 hours, huh? Then I will, I'll play, I'm going to play some Fortnite after this. So if anyone wants to add me, it's, J.O. Buha. Yo Buha. Connor Phillips, a Buha IRL Q&A video once a month would go hard. How like a live? What do you mean by IRL? Chris, you should get someone to draw and mix an owl and a dragon for a tattoo. That would be dope. So I mean, one thing with it was like I wanted a tattoo for my son. I wanted a tattoo for my mom, my dad. Couple, a tattoo for my uncle, a tattoo for myself. So, now I got to get one for my wife who's been on me about it. So that's probably my next tattoo. Adam Habib, how many games do you think it'll take to incorporate LeBron to reach this team offensively? Do you think they will struggle? I don't think they will struggle. I think it is nice to have LeBron return against Utah, who, looking at it quickly here, they are not a good defensive team. They are 25th defensively. So if there's ever playing Utah twice in the same week with a 4-day break in between is a nice way for LeBron to return and LA to figure out the offense. But again, I get some of the reason people are skeptical or concerned. I totally understand that. But even going back to last year, like I believe they were 18-10. I forget if it's 18-10 in the Luka only games or what the specific record was with Luka, LeBron, and Austin. But they were a really good basketball team that won at an above 50 win pace. And I think there's a level of institutional knowledge and continuity with LeBron and Luka specifically that those are two of the smartest people to ever touch a basketball. So, smartest basketball players to touch a basketball. So, yeah. Mo Love, what's your biggest surprise so far this season? Do you want Lakers or do you want NBA? If we're going NBA, I would say, I mean, with Lakers, I think I'm not surprised. Like I've said this before, I'm not surprised that the Lakers are 10-4 or, previously it had been like a lesser record, but I am surprised at how good the Lakers have been despite how many injuries they've had, because, we looked at the schedule. Like I thought 10-4 was like a realistic, like healthy record for this group, like 10-4, 11-3 based on their start. But then you factor in like LeBron's out, then Marcus has missed multiple games, forget Marcus. Luka's missed multiple games. Austin's missed multiple games. Then Marcus has missed some games. Rui's missed a couple. Ayton's missed one. Like you just go down the list. Like Jake LaRavia has been the healthiest and most available Laker. And if you told me that going into the season, I would not have expected this group to be 10-4. So I think that looking at like the leap Austin has taken, how good DeAndre Ayton has been defensively overall, like the beginning of the road trip notwithstanding, and just this group's connectivity and resilience overall, I think has been impressive. If we're talking all NBA, I think San Antonio is further ahead in their trajectory than I thought. I had mentioned them as a dark horse, like playoff team or team that I thought maybe could even push for like number 6 in the West. And maybe that's the way this ends up going. They're technically 5th right now, but San Antonio to me looks like a legit team that, depending on like their health and if they make another move, because they still have some assets and flexibility to make another trade, they could be a team to me that easily wins a round in the playoffs. And like a team I don't really want to face Wemby in a 7-game series. Like it will technically be, of course, his first playoffs, but that's not going to be like an easy series. So like right now they have the 4th best point differential in the West and the 5th best point differential overall in the NBA. So it's like, I think they're ahead of schedule. Phoenix is probably the other biggest surprise in the West for me. Like, Portland, I thought could be in the mix as a back end playing team. That they're probably a little bit, doing better than I thought. But like Phoenix, I did not see Phoenix being the 6th seed up to this point in the season. In the East, Detroit and how dominant they have been, they look like the clear cut number 3 best team in the East, if not potentially knocking on that door at number 2, depending on who you want to put at number 1. From a point differential perspective, they're number 2. Toronto being at 8-5 on a 3-game win streak. Atlanta has turned things around in part because of the Lakers. Then, I guess negative surprises, we could look at Orlando has underachieved. I think in the West, Golden State had a really good start. Then they've fallen off, and like the Kuminga thing has been rough. And then, the Clippers, I did not see I was lower on the Clippers. Like everyone had the Clippers as a top 4 team, 5th at worst in the West. I had the Clippers as a play-in team. If you guys remember my West, I had the Clippers 7th going into the season, but I did not see the Clippers being the 11th or, technically tied for 10th best team in the West right now. Like they've been a disaster. Sky Falcon, what's the record for the next 5 games? Lakers actually can clean up really nicely here the next 10 games. So if I'll share it and let's go through it together. So we got versus Utah. I think that's a win. At Utah, I think that's a win. Honestly, like versus Clippers, versus Dallas, versus New Orleans, versus Phoenix, that could be a 6-game winning streak, which would technically be an 8-game winning streak. Then they go on the road to at Toronto, Boston, Philly, Utah, Clippers, Phoenix. That's technically 12 games. So if we chop off the Phoenix and LA games to end, so it's from Utah. They play Utah 3 times in their next 10 games. So I think that should be, if they take care of business, that should be 3 wins. At Toronto, Boston, and Philly will all be tough games. Obviously, like the Lakers are better than every team they are playing here over the next 10 games. So that is an encouraging thing, but I'll say 8-2. I think they probably lose one of these home games between Clippers, Mavericks, Pelicans, Suns. I'll not say Pelicans, probably not Dallas, but maybe they drop one of the Clippers or Suns, and then they lose one of these road games to probably say Toronto or Philly, or maybe they win all the home games and then lose to Toronto and Philly. I'll say 8-2. I said 4-1 for the road trip. They went 3-2. They let me down a little bit, but they could easily go 10-0 and be on an 11 or 12 game win streak. I don't think that's going to happen based on them letting go of the rope on this road trip in Atlanta, Charlotte to a lesser degree, and certainly OKC. So I'll say 8-2, but let me know in the chat what you guys think. Your boy, I need life advice. How do I help someone stop listening to Drake? I will say I've listened to him less recently, but mainly because I'm just listening to a million podcasts every day. Connor Phillips, questions about real life in the same vein as Dear Jovan comment Sarah had. Got it. Yeah. Well, let's do it. Ray, it'll take 1 quarter for LBJ to incorporate. That's probably it's probably true. Connor Phillips, do you see any players around the league that you think the Lakers could take a swing on like they did with Rui, a buy low with high potential upside situation? I mean, that would kind of similar to the trade discussion. I mean, if we're talking about young guys on certain teams, well, Charlotte, the list of teams that might not trade with the Lakers is kind of long. If we look at, let's say, Brooklyn and Washington, in Brooklyn, I like Highsmith. He's obviously a little bit older. He's 28, but that's a guy who has had some moments in Miami. I like Terrence Mann. Again, I'm kind of violating the youth rule here, but like these are guys who have been starting level guys on playoff teams that have fallen out of favor or you know, their teams kind of moved on from them and now they're in Siberia and Brooklyn. Realistically though, I look at Day'Ron Sharpe and Zaire Williams as a couple of guys in Brooklyn that I like. You guys know about, I've talked about Day'Ron before going back to the offseason. In Washington, the aforementioned Cam Whitmore. I think Kispert is going to have a moment. I mean, he's at 26, he's a little bit older, but I think Kispert's going to have a moment on a team. I look at, I mean, obviously they got some, like, I'm not going to say like Koulibaly or George or Sarr. Like, I think those guys are keepers for Washington. In the West, I think Keon Ellis qualifies here, but again, I'm not sure about the viability of Sacramento trading with LA. With Memphis, I still like Aldama in a certain role. I like Aldama in I also like Brandon Clark, but he's getting up there now. He's 29. G.G. Jackson still feels like someone who has a lot of potential that I'm not quite sure what you know, he's dealt with some tough injuries. I think Jalen Wells longer term is going to be a guy who might slip through the cracks. Obviously he's starting on Memphis right now, but you know, we'll see kind of how his career plays out. New Orleans, I like Misi a lot. That's a guy that I think could be something in the future. Sadiq Bey is one that the chat has thrown out a lot. Those are some of the guys on like the lesser teams. The better teams, like if Toronto comes back down to earth at some point, Agbaji is a major guy who I think could be that type of player. And I really like Colin Murray Boyles. I know he's lottery pick rookie, but I think he's going to be pretty good. Yeah. I mean, there's these types of guys on every team, but those are some of the names I like. Chris was really, really hurt, or did JJ bench him for this game? My understanding is he's been dealing with the calf thing for about a week. Cage Britt, Jovan, if you had to create a new expansion team outside of Vegas and Seattle, where would it be and what would the name be? Also the color scheme. I think Vegas and Seattle are probably the two most deserving cities and probably make the most sense. Of course, Seattle bringing back the Supersonics. Vegas is, you know, one of the big cities on the rise in the U.S. So I think there's a natural. It also allows you, I think, some combination of. I mean, so you know, if you're I guess would technically only be adding one team from the West to the East, and it would probably be Memphis or New Orleans. But if you're, I mean, there's also been talk about Memphis and New Orleans potential teams that you relocate, and those are the Vegas, Seattle teams. So kind of depends how that plays out. Then in that case, you could maybe put Minnesota in the East. But I think one of Minnesota, New Orleans, or Memphis has to go East in terms of moving to the East. And then you add the two teams in the West, and then it's even. But outside of that, I think there's a few cities that come to mind. I think in the South, I think Nashville, and I think Kansas City are the two, maybe Louisville, but like one of those cities comes to mind as I think cities that would really welcome and embrace a basketball team. And for Nashville now with Memphis, and like I think there's been a little bit of a checkered history right now in terms of basketball success in the South, right? Like you do have the Heat and the Hawks, and I would say Orlando's an example of like a small market South team that has been like, they've made the finals multiple times. They've largely been competitive. But you do have Charlotte used to lead the NBA in attendance in the 90s. So that's not like, then they left and they came back. But some of these Charlotte and Memphis and New Orleans, those have not been like the best situations from a ratings perspective and attendance perspective. I think that's why Memphis and New Orleans have been floated as two potential relocation teams. But so I do wonder about the viability of basketball in the South to a degree. But I think one of those, if I had to pick, I think Kansas City would be really fun. And like we've obviously seen what's gone on with the Chiefs. But so I guess in theory, I might go some sort of red and yellow. I'm bad at team names on the spot, to be completely honest. Yeah, I don't have, if you guys have something in the chat. And then I think the other interesting one would be Mexico City, but I think there would be a bit of it. There's just a hurdle having out of the country teams for players. I think Toronto's dealt with this at times of just players want to primarily be in the US, that is their preference. And of course you can get Canadian players in, Toronto with the Raptors. You can get Mexican players in Mexico City, with, whatever team that would be. But I do think that's a little bit of a challenge of just getting I think just the natural, if you survey the average NBA player, they prefer to play in the US, and that's just how it is. So I think there's clearly with the G League and the Mexico City showcase, it has clearly been successful and is something that I think could work. So maybe they end up expanding there. But Bino says Vancouver. I mean, that should have probably never lost the Grizzlies, right? That is Mo Love. Sometimes the name is linked to the city. Adam, dude, no one was at the NOLA game yesterday for real. Yeah, it's tough. I love New Orleans. I responded to someone in the comments about this. It's probably one of my top 5 favorite road cities, but the crowd there can be tough. It was a really fun for the play-in game in 2024. That was really fun. And that was remember Zion had 41, I think, before he got injured in the fourth quarter. And that was a fun game, but yeah, it can be tough. Chris says they stole the Kings from Cincinnati. They need to give the team back. I mean, it's tough. Yeah, I mean, you could. Cincinnati's a good one. David Parks, thoughts on Kobe Buffkin? I don't have a strong opinion on Kobe Buffkin. I would say similar to Nick Smith. And now, Drew Timme as well. I like the Lakers taking these swings on players who have some form of pedigree. And that's been a strength of the organization for, the last half decade or so is like they've had a lot of like, Rui, Malik Monk, Stanley Johnson, like had a moment with the Lakers. Like they've taken some swings on guys. Now looking at Kobe Buffkins, so he's played 27 career games, career 37% shooter, 22% on threes, 49% on twos, 65% on free throws. And then if we want to extrapolate it out to per 36, 15, 6, and 5 and 1 steal. So, kind of Nick, like that's kind of similar to Nick Smith's numbers in terms of the like he clearly can score and he could pass a bit. The issue has been the scoring efficiency has been atrocious. 42% true shooting percentage as a rookie, 48% as a sophomore. For perspective, 53% is league average, and you want to be above 53%. His advanced metrics have largely been negative. So, I mean, he's a young player. He is a guy who I know the Lakers were interested in, and had he been available, that was a guy that they were looking at in that 2023 draft ahead of JHS. And had he been available there, my understanding is they would have taken him above JHS. So kind of a sliding doors moment a bit for him in the Lakers. I mean, looking at this is insane. So if we go 2023 draft, the 5 picks ahead of JHS, Lively, Grady Dick, Jordan Hawkins, Kobe Buffkin, Keontae George, JHS, then Hawkes, Brzemski, Whitmore, then you get into Clowney, Whitehead, Chris Murray, who you would take ahead of him, Omax Prosper, Sasser, Shepard, Nick Smith, Sensabaugh, Strother, Kobe Brown. So certainly some misses there already in the back half of the first round, but the picks directly sandwiching JHS on both sides were all players you would take over him in a heartbeat. Cole Jackson, what do you think of KCP? I like KCP. I think he's been better defensively this year than he had been the last couple of years. But I do wonder, as a guy who is 32, about to be 33 in February, he might just be a little bit not everybody's LeBron. Not everybody is. I just think role players age a little bit differently. So for him, I think if he's the best the Lakers can do on the trade market, I'm open to it. He's not shooting the ball well this year, shooting 30% on threes after 34% last year. And that was coming off of a stretch where he went, starting with the Lakers tenure in 17-18, he went 38, 35, 39, 41, 39, 42, 41. So that was a stretch of 7 years where he shot 38 or better in 6 of them and 41 or better in 3 of them. So elite marks there from deep. Last couple of years been 34%, 30%. So that gives me some pause. He is largely healthy. You look at last 4 years, has missed 6 or fewer games in all 4 years. I like KCP. I think while he's been better defensively this year, I do think in general he's slipped from where he was as a Laker or even like the Denver title year. I think since the Denver title year, he has not been the same player. So I view him more as like a high level bench guy than a starter. But I guess if there's a way to add him and it is just sort of like a Gabe plus, if it's Gabe plus Dalton, right? I don't think the money exactly works there, but if there's a way to not really take away from the core of the team and just add KCP, I'd be open to it. But there are definitely guys I like better as a 5th starter. Brad V, thank you for gifting a membership. I appreciate it. Kane, if Dallas keeps up this slow start, who would be some of the guys you think the Lakers should go after if they have the fire sale? Dallas has got, as former Dallas fans and as Luka fans will note, Dallas does have it was a team that was constructed around Luka Doncic at one point, and then they decided to pivot for inexplicable reasons. But let's look at how everyone's performing. I mean, a few guys come to mind immediately. Like, I think PJ Washington, Max Christie, Najee Marshall, and Daniel Gafford are four guys that stand out, and I would take any combination of them. I think Max is probably the closest to what they need. I think PJ Washington is, he's not shooting the ball well this year, 25% on threes. He's a better rebounder and defender than Rui, and he's probably a more stable. I don't even know if that's true. Rui's a better shooter. Washington's better, like, off the dribble, self-creation, better defender, better rebounder. So, like, I'd probably rather have him than Rui in a vacuum. But when you factor in Rui's three-point shooting and how important that is to the offense, it gets a little tricky. But I like PJ a lot. Max is pretty close to, like, the ideal fifth guy. He's just still a little unproven in the sense of, like, he's obviously played in the playoffs a little bit for the Lakers, but not really in, like, a high level starting every night role. But Max this year, 13 points a game, 46% on threes, 3.5 boards, 2.5 assists, steals and blocks aren't really there, but, like, he's more of a technically sound defender than that, like, high level playmaker. Najee, I just really like how Najee plays. He's a little wild, and the shooting can come and go. He's shooting 31% this year, but I've been impressed with his off the dribble chops. Gafford, I think, is just a really high level backup center or fringe starting center. Then Jaden Hardy is interesting as, like, that bench scoring guard, I guess, potentially, depending on the role. So I think Dallas has a lot of guys I'd want to pick off. I still have a hard time believing they would trade with the Lakers. All right, hit the 2-hour mark. So going to wrap in a second. Kevin Cambridge, would you give up first to get Max back or no? I would. I don't know if the Lakers would. I think I've said this before. I think the Lakers are going to have a pretty high bar to give up a first, and I think it's probably going to have to be a high level starter type. And Connor Phillips says no thanks on Hardy. To be clear, I view, like, more as, like, a throw in to a larger trade, not as, like, the centerpiece. But sure. NR Jovan, I really appreciate you spending 2 hours plus with us. I appreciate you guys spending 2 hours plus with me. And for those who are on playback, it's been like 4.5 hours. All right, so enough people said 5 more minutes in chat. We'll go 5 more minutes, and then we are wrapping at 2:08. Adam, do you feel Austin and Luka are getting too fatigued when they bring up the ball against the defense pressing 94 feet? Feels like when others bring the ball up against pressure equals turnover. In general, I think Austin and Luka have a little bit too much on their shoulders right now. That's where I think LeBron's return will be a welcomed addition for this group. If we look at it now, it should be updated on NBA.com. Luka's averaging 37.1 minutes per game, which is the second most of his career. Austin's at 36.3, which is the most of his career. And then if we look at the advanced metrics for those guys, Luka's usage is at 35.9, which is, I don't think, quite the highest of his career, but might be second. Let me pull it up quickly here. Luka's highest usage, 37. Well, he's at 36.9. Yeah, so Basketball Reference and NBA.com are a little bit different with that. I guess if I look at his NBA.com percentage, It's not showing usage for some reason. I guess if I... Oh, wait. No. Sorry, I'm trying to do this on the spot. So let's see. 2003, 2004. 2023, 24 was this high at 34.9. So right now, actually, this is his highest usage percentage of his career, according to NBA.com. According to Basketball Reference, it's close. So either way, he's at second most minutes of his career, highest or second highest usage percentage of his career. That is, I think, for a group that has an Austin and eventually a Luka, I would like to, a LeBron, I would like to see that come down a little bit. With Austin, I think it's also a little bit too high. And I did wonder earlier in the road trip, especially if those guys just kind of hit a wall. They've obviously both been dealing with injuries. Austin's had the groin, Luka's had the hand and the leg. So, in short, yes, I think having LeBron back will help, and just cumulatively, those two guys doing less in terms of minutes and workload would be nice. I really like basketball. Thank you for the super chat. Best bull case for a role for Thiero this season. The knee responds well. He's healthy and spry, and the shot develops to like a baseline level, and he's maybe the eighth man on this team. I think eighth or ninth is probably the ceiling there. I don't see it going higher than that, but I do think the top eight's probably pretty locked in. Like JJ loves Gabe, so I want to be realistic and honest about that. So probably ninth man. Now that I'm talking it through here, I would say the best bull case for Thiero would be him earning the ninth man spot in the rotation and being this versatile, multi-positional defender who can play 3 through 5, because he actually played some small ball 5 in. And I'm not advocating for the Lakers to play small ball with him, but if you could envision a lineup of him, Rui, and LeBron as the front court, like I think he could play an important role in that type of group, which I think JJ eventually will experiment more with once LeBron is back. Cage Britt, Wiz, Justin, Champagne, metrics last season, great 3-and-D. Yeah, that's a good call. Even obviously Julian as well, but with the Spurs, like the Champagnes are I think players that, like, obviously with the Spurs, he's probably set in to what they're doing as a key bench piece. But yeah, that's a good call out. That's a good player to note. I really like basketball. Even if he plays out of his mind, it'll be hard to crack 6 to 8 due to politics. Agreed. Bino, having LeBron back, all three can reduce minutes, hoping they keep Bron around 30 to preserve him. Yeah, I think Bron will probably bounce back to... He'll probably be a little bit higher than that, but like if we look at his career, the lowest of his career was 2020, 2021. So I was coming off of the bubble. That was also the year that he dealt with injuries, Solomon Hill. 33.4 is the lowest of his career. Since then, it's been 37, 35 and a half, basically, then 35 last year. 30 would be great. I don't see LeBron accepting that. I think it's probably going to be 32, 33, but 32, 33 is still fine. But with Luka and Austin, I think both those guys should ideally be around 34, 35. I think you should try to keep guys under 36, at least in the regular season. Omaris Jovan, if LeBron leaves next year, can we steal Lou Dort or Hartenstein? It's possible. Depends how OKC does their cap stuff. Looking at it, because I believe it's a team option on Hartenstein, if I'm not mistaken. Let's look at Hartenstein and Dort. Yeah, Hartenstein team option 28.5 next year for OKC. With Sam Presti's wizardry, I would not be surprised if he opted out and then signed at a lower number, closer to like 15 to 20 because that's just how they do it. And then Lou Dort, though, at 18.2 team option, he's due for a raise. So he does have the same agent that Russ formerly had, which I think is of note because obviously Russ had a really good relationship with the Thunder for a long time. So I want with the Thunder's luck, they'll get those two guys to opt out and take discounts, and that's how it'll go. I mean, look, if they win a second title, that's a tough decision in terms of like, do you want to go for the three-peat or do you want more money, right? That's a little bit of a different. We haven't seen a player in that scenario in a bit, but players do tend to take the money in most cases. But so technically, yes, both guys could be free agents depending on what happens with OKC and how deep they're willing to go into the tax and the second apron. But it probably depends on if they win the title. Like if you win a second title and then you cheap out on Dort and Hartenstein, you deserve whatever bad karma you get after that. What did Connor say? I missed a super chat. Sorry. RGN Cal 4, who's the best player for Gabe, Maxey, in a first? And of course, I've already gone 5 minutes over my my original extra 5 minutes. In terms of best player for those, so that's about 22, 23 million. And the first, let me quickly look at contracts. And I will tell you, this is not, let's see. Well, this isn't an exact. I wish. Give me 1 second here. I don't know why this is. All right, if we get into here, I think I figured it out. This is a rough estimate based on getting into that range. We're talking I have to go to the next page. Sorry, this is a little confusing on Spotrac. I mean, it gets you in the Herb mix. It gets you in the PJ Washington mix. It gets you in the Brooks mix. I don't think Neesmith is available for that. This is on average annual value, so it's not the exact. Like Herb technically is making 12, so this contract. I wish there was a way you could just go through every contract in the NBA and go to a certain salary target range, but I think I don't think it's getting you as much as if you threw in Rui. I do think Rui. I think right now Gabe and Maxey are still viewed as at least. I think Gabe is a slightly negative contract, and I think Maxey is a negative contract in terms of their on-court value. Now, with the expiring nature, obviously that's what presents some value. Teams could get off contracts, and then you're giving them a first. But I think they can get a fit starter type. I think it, but that's probably not enough for Herb. That's probably not enough for Wiggins. That's maybe enough for Brooks. I'm just kind of thinking about some of the guys that we've talked about before. Now, if you go to a different position, could that get you a Malik Monk? If you go to the big man spot, could that get you a Daniel Gafford if Dallas is willing to play ball? I think that's kind of like your general I would say like that's like the general player range. Now, I'm not saying all these guys are going to be available, but in terms of guys on multi-year salaries in that price range of probably like 18 to 22 million, and they're more like fringe starter / high level bench guys, I think like a Malik Monk type, a Dylan Brooks type, a Daniel Gafford type. I think those are like the big wing guard sort of level you could probably get to with a Gabe Maxey first close to the deadline. I think anything higher than any of those respective type of players, you have to now throw in a Dalton, a second, a swap, a Rui. Like you have to throw in more stuff to get to a higher level of player. But I think that's like the general type of player that could be available to them. So those are all solid players that in a certain context could be helpful, but that would be my answer there. Thomas, Gabe, Maxey, Dalton, and a first from Max, Clay, Najee. Sure, sign me up. I don't know if Dallas does it, but sign me up. All right, I'm going to wrap here. I went about almost 10 minutes over, as we do here on Buha's Block, but appreciate you all for rocking with me on the double stream, the playback, and then the post-game show. I will be back tomorrow. I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing a pre-recorded, maybe I'll do a mailbag prompt or I'll do a Q&A. Not sure yet, but we'll be going live at some point tomorrow. And then, of course, Tuesday, we got Lakers Jazz. I will be at that game, so no playback, but we'll be going live afterward. Then we got Wednesday, Beyond the Block. Thursday, Lakers Collective. And we actually got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'll probably go live all 3 days. Wednesday will be Beyond the Block. Thursday will be post Lakers Collective. And then Friday will be at some point. Then Lakers don't play again until Sunday. So big week of lives, big week of content. Appreciate you all for rocking with me. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. There are over 800 of you in the chat right now. It would mean the world if you guys would hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you have not yet subscribed. About 40% of you who watch consistently are not yet subscribed. And then for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow. I will talk to you all then. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. Appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your weekend.